Ladies and gentlemen, make your way to the main stage as we'll be starting with the first panel with the Wayl team of how to make your own comic book and more. All that at the main stage. Make your way right now with the Wayl team.
Hey everyone, hi, welcome to StarsCon, by the way, a lovely con. I hope everyone's having a good time. Is everyone having a good time? Yeah? Small convention, but small is good. We get to speak to a lot more people, get to see a lot more artists. And we're here right now with the lovely team of Wayl. To give you a bit of introduction, my name is Kevin Sebastian. I am the admin of Hobby Nation. It's a community group. And we are here to talk about a comic book called Wayl. And we have Mr. Zaid and Mr. Yasser here as well. So we're going to be talking about a few things. Like, just before we get into it, we're going to talk about the challenges of making comic books here in our region and the struggles of being a writer, how to fund your book. And we're going to get started right into it. Okay, so what's Wayl about?
Wayl is a concept that came to me about 2009 or 2011. It was a concept that, first of all, came out of, shall we say, the artistic wanderlust, shall we say. You know, it's kind of interesting when you see the rise of Marvel and DC after the Dark Knight series, the Dark Knight trilogy, and when the MCU first came out. You think to yourself, well, there's a lot of things that are happening around the world. When you see them in conventions, there's a lot of stuff that's coming out from various areas in the world. Why isn't there anything happening in the Middle East? And this started off, the concept started off with me when I was still living in Canada. I was living in Toronto. And I thought, well, you know what? This is something, I'm a good writer. I used to work in television before, and you know, it's always been my forte to work as a producer and a writer. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to try and come up with a concept that is Middle East centric, something that could rival the folks back over there, and still sort of prove that there's enough creativity here, whether it's in the storytelling or if it's in the media production, shall we say. And therefore, when I moved back here in 2011, I sort of looked at things here. I'm like, you know what? There's two sides to every story. Everybody wears a little bit of a mask as they do. And going back to, again, maybe perhaps it's better that I go back to sort of a background for myself. I was born in Jordan. I moved here in '89 when I was 6 years old. I grew up here most of my life. And so going back and forth between these two countries for more than 30 years, you think to yourself, well, you're stuck between two cultures. You're trying to find out exactly what it is. Your home culture, what it is, you go back and you're you're an absolute stranger in it. Whereas a place like Dubai, you call it more of a home. But when you do over there, there's a sort of, I don't know what you would call it, discomfort, something like a weird, strange aura that comes with it. So instead of basing something here, I decided to base it over there. And for me, it's the story is based in Amman, in Jordan. For me, when it came to writing these things and other things that I've written before, I feel that wherever it's set, the area itself should be a character. And Amman, I think, is one of the places where, it's one of those cities where if you suck the people out of it, you can feel the city living and breathing on its own.
So, yeah, so I'm looking at the art style right now, and the first thing I'm thinking of, because I'm a bit of an old soul, I grew up here in Dubai, I was born here. Back then, we only had 3 TV channels, I think?
Yeah.
And 2 newspapers. And the first thing I'm looking at over here is Phantom Comics, He-Man Comics. That's the first influences I get. But tell us a bit more about yourself. You're an artist, you work in the ad agency world, and now suddenly you're making comic books.
Well, the thing is, I've obviously, I've always been illustrating since I was a child. I think the first bit of cartoon I was introduced to was Woody Woodpecker. And I remember at the end of the series of Woody Woodpecker, they kind of had the how they arrived at it. And I was around 5 years old. And when I saw the whole process of how they created the cartoon, the comics, and then how the animation worked and the sound, that just gripped me. So from then on, I just started drawing. And initially, my art style was nothing like this. I was more of a Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes kind of guy, Disney. I was just very into that stuff. I loved comic strips. But of course, I was into comics as well, the superhero stuff, Marvel, DC stuff. Again, I drew all my life, but then by the time I graduated, coming back into the region, there really wasn't anything, especially in Saudi, in the way of art and animation or film or any of that. So naturally, I went right into advertising, and for a long time, I worked in as an art director and an English copywriter as well. So I do a lot of writing as well. And then I went into publishing. All right. So we both have day jobs. We don't create comics for a living.
This is what we do for a living. Yeah.
That is the dream.
It is the dream.
It is the dream.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I'm a consultant. So I consult agencies and their clients on how to make their ads relevant for the region. That's what I do. Yeah, I know it's pretty boring, but what happened with Wayl is after, I want to say, 15 years of getting away from drawing, just drawing in general, illustrating, and then sort of comic book art, which I've always been sort of what I'm into. I was looking for a way of merging sort of my writing talent with the illustration, and at that time, the MEFCC had started in Dubai. So the first year and the second year, I'm going in and I'm feeling pumped and I'm feeling like there must be something I can do here. Around 2014, my studio had shut down. I was kind of on a low point, and I entered a competition for MEFCC, which is to draw your first, to draw by hand your comic book strip. Write, illustrate everything. I said, you know what, maybe this is something I need to try. I haven't done this in 15 years. Let me see if I still got it. It's just something I wanted to do. So in conjunction with the Moving Image Museum, we did that, and I won first place, and I got to meet Marvel's editor-in-chief, C.B. Cebulski. And he kind of boosted my confidence, and he said, you got it, you should do this. And the end of that year, I met Zaid at Kunia. It was almost
it's a very kind of strange story because the very first MEFCC was when I decided that I was going to go and throw my hat in.
This was in 2012.
This was in 2012.
Yeah.
I had already come up with the characters, sort of visuals, and I gave them to a friend, an artist over here in Dubai, who decided, he did the illustrations for me. They were fantastic illustrations. The very first MEFCC, that was, I think it was at the Marina, I believe, somewhere close to the Marina.
There you are.
The original one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's for those of you who don't know, we didn't have very good cameras back in the day on our phones. So that's the biggest picture we have of 2012.
So I mean, I submitted the artwork.
Probably with a BlackBerry.
And I just decided to let it go.
It wasn't a BlackBerry, yeah.
I decided to let it go, and at one point in time, I'm sitting in a panel like this, just like everybody else. My girlfriend at the time, who was a D&D freak, she was going off and she was moderating one of the games, and I'm sitting, and all of a sudden I get a phone call. Hi, is this Zaid? Yeah. Zaid, you just won the award for Best Original Artwork. You mind coming up on stage because they're presenting the award right now? Okay. I don't know if the look on my face is obvious. But it's like, what on earth am I doing up here?
Did you even remember taking part for a competition, by the way?
I did.
Okay.
Just having submitted it, you know what? It's there. I'm just going to go and do my thing.
Right. So how did this, first of all, Wayl is based in Jordan, right? What's it about? What's the story about?
Okay. You want to do this one, should I?
Oh, no, that's you. I wrote this.
So, the story is, I'm going to start off with saying it's semi-autobiographical, but anyways, it's a story of a person whose father is a philanthropist, a mega businessman in Jordan, who passes away. We find out later that it's due to mysterious circumstances, and this person who lives abroad comes back with his wife to kind of pick up on the legacy, shall we say. As he goes there and he finds out the number of the deception faces that he sees in the corrupt city, he thinks he can do something about it, but a series of events culminates in him being murdered. And in the second series of events, at the time, also turns him into this
I think we have
creation.
the panel over there. That's his transformation.
That's his transformation right there at the top corner. Yeah.
This is the scene where the murder takes place.
Yes, and that happens in the city of Petra. For anyone who's been there, obviously, people are familiar with
the ancient.
I hate using Indiana Jones as the reference, but yeah, again, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That's how many people in our circles know this. But the ancient city of Petra is an extremely famous place, very nice in terms of magical wonder, and it's decided to base his transformation over there. So once he turns into this person, into this being, shall I say, he decides that he wants to exact revenge on the people that he wants to that have done this to him. At the same time, he feels that the corruption that he's seen in the country, as far as he's come back, there needs to be justice to be brought to it. It does come in, however, again, he reaches that narrow point of trying not to cross the line between vengeance and justice, because he himself is not aware that he's doing that. He's got so much of a vendetta that he wants to exhume on the people that it's that one really fine hairline
line.
sort of.
I think one of the things that also drew me to the Wayl story is that it's not a superhero trope type of story.
That's right. We refuse to.
It's something we arrived to as we kept on creating the book. It's more of a psychological thriller, and the super being element of it is just sort of a garnish. It's not really where the story lies. And as we started developing each single issue year by year, we got to a point where we realized that the story was bigger. And by the time we got to 2020, we decided we need to go into creating a graphic novel and really take the story to another direction, not another direction, but kind of expand on.
We kind of agreed on this late last year, earlier this year, that we are not going to call this a comic book in the sort of generic sense of the word.
Yeah.
I think we've decided that this is more, because it's a psychological thriller, but it is presented in graphic form, we're actually going to be calling this graphic literature. Because in essence, this is what it is. It's not your superhero, biff, bam, pow kind of thing. It's a lot deeper, I think. I mean, that he can attest to that a little bit better.
Of course, yeah. I wanna, for all of the people trying to start out here, one of the things that, Kevin, you were asking us, like, how difficult our journey was to come to this. We've put up a bunch of pictures here of our process of what happened. I mean, we started out with crowdfunding in Aflamna. We tried to connect with anyone who showed up in the city to kind of put our word out there. And this was before we even published the book. So I don't know if you guys can see the image of us with Dr. John Lent, who writes for the
National Journal of Comic Books, right there.
Yeah, and this gentleman here, I mean, we have to give him a lot of credit. This is where our reputation as a legitimate bunch of, I guess, graphic novel creators was put in stone, was with him.
A little bit about Dr. Lent. Dr. Lent is the editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Comic Art. He works out of Temple University in the States. I think it's in Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken. And this is an academic journal. This is not something that you go and buy in a store somewhere. It gets sent off to the professionals of the world. It gets sent off to everybody who's with the industry. And it's actually funny because when this particular essay came out, it was about comics in the Middle East and what have you. When this became the highlight of the essay itself, funnily enough, year after year, we found that there was a lot more academic interest in the story or in our venture than there was in terms of the fanhood.
Yeah.
So just going through, for example, Google, we realized that someone had taken this article, published it in another academic journal out of the University of Mississippi. And then again, just this past year, going through Google, when I get like Google alerts, somebody actually cited this and an article from Women Write About Comics in a university from Sweden. So to say that this is kind of a strange jump between everything we have to give credit to Dr. Net because he took us somewhere we wouldn't have ever imagined we were.
You mentioned as this is a very Arabic story based in an Arab region, and for people who are aware, I don't know if you've seen the TikTok meme about how Hollywood portrays Arab regions, where there's a yellow filter, there's the music, women in the hijab, and
Swords, genies.
how do you guys? We've watched Hollywood. We've seen how they treat Arabic art and culture and people. How do you deal with all that in this comic book?
I wanted to break that trope. This is exactly what it is that I wanted to do. This, you don't want the genie in the lamp. You don't want the swordsman in the desert. You don't want the lady in the niqab. You just want someone who is actually from this world, that exists, that can exist, what we now call sociologically the third culture kid. The person who's been exposed to the rest of the world, who comes from one straight up culture, that can integrate both of them and live in both absolutely, without any culture shock. Having said that, the person who comes in, the protagonist, experiences culture shock in his own country because he hasn't been there for so long. It's changed so much for him that it's just inevitable that there would be a shock.
I think also in terms of art, what we've done, if we go back, it went through a transition. Like the logo itself, we started thinking of the art in terms of an indigenous language. So when I was sitting with Zaid, I was like, Zaid, I really want to explore this from an angle that isn't derived from abroad, but we still need to keep some of those global elements, some of the foundations of what you see in comic books. So I did a lot of research, and really it was looking into yourself and just kind of looking into our own ancient culture. I looked into cuneiform that came from Iraq. I looked into what we call the Musnid writing, which is ancient Arabic, and how it spread from the south to the north, and how to incorporate all of that into the style itself. Even in terms of drawing the characters, I tried to think about how I really like to draw myself and just bear all in that sense. And at the same time, honor the story and its the amount of grit and rawness and crudeness that's in it. And it was very, very emotionally charged. And there were rules that we were breaking in it. And at the end, we just felt that this is really what's serving the story. So, yeah.
Speaking of the story, did you both ever fight with each other on doing stuff like this?
No, it's fine.
I mean, you are polite, obviously. But
no, we argue and we debate stuff, but there's a maturity in our relationship.
Who's married over here? Show of hands. You ever had a fight with your husband?
Every day.
Yeah, pretty much the same.
No, I think my fights with my wife maybe are louder than the ones we... No, we've had it
Really?
loud ones. Yeah. We've had
I'm not too sure about
It's not that... You know what? We know each other so well that you can just be... We're very straightforward with each other. I think we've had a bunch of arguments.
He wants me to punch him in the face now.
Yeah, sure.
He's going to be okay with it.
No, look, I think to be honest, the first thing we said to each other when we moved into this is like, look, we're both professionals, we're mature, we need to sacrifice a lot to serve the story. So whenever we found ourselves at a crossroad or at a conflict, we're like, okay, is this going to serve the story? And I'll let Zaid speak for his experience with dealing with me, but from my perspective, so Zaid would probably, let's say, pick a panel or something or a page. He's like, Yasser, this isn't going to work like this. This isn't what I want. I'm like, no, Zaid, and I'll sit and rationalize it. And I don't know if there are any artists in here, but try to think if you've ever worked with a client and you sit and you try to rationalize everything to death. And then I take 2 days to think about it. I'm like, oh, damn it, he was right. I gotta redraw that. So there've been incidents like that.
Well, it's the clash of creativity, I think, because there's a little bit of a sort of a level that people don't really know about when it comes to this. I work in real estate marketing now, but I actually used to be a television producer. So when I write my stories, I write it with the storyboard in my head. I know exactly how I want to visualize it. He can tell you how detailed my scripts are for him. They drive him insane. So when it comes to that, between the storyboard in my head and how he visualizes it, there's always some kind of clash.
We always have a talk because again, because I come from advertising, I understand storyboards. I knew right away what Zaid was trying to do. But I guess a bunch of times it was a matter of, well, Zaid, that doesn't translate immediately into comics.
That's right.
Because what you storyboard, and then we started talking about the opportunity of expanding how you see those visuals in comic books. Nothing like, if you can see, we break sort of traditional paneling a lot. Not all the time, but we do it quite a bit in the book, and that's important because what happens is we started talking about, oh, wait a minute, if we can do that, Yasser, I had this idea for the way, these sequence of events should happen. How can we draw that? And then we'd sit together and brainstorm it. And the same thing with the writing as well, with the dialogue.
Yeah, that's true. It is. Because,
with the dialogue.
There's, as he said, a lot of the stuff that you see over here, breaks the frame. You take a look at the way that it's been drawn. Obviously, that doesn't stick to a certain kind of template. He was the one who actually encouraged me to do it this way. For me, again, I storyboard things, and when he said, no, you need this to have a little bit more dynamics in it. When I saw the first couple of times that he demonstrated this for me, I said, you know what, this is perfect. You've captured the essence very well. There are some things that I suggest for him as well when it comes to the drawing, and I think we've applied that sometimes in the story, but not always, which is the stop motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, the stop motion. If
drives me crazy.
Yeah, if you can see, for example, this panel over here. Maybe if you move the thing a little bit. That motion, that last frame, is actually the motion of the two characters just captured in stop motion. And so, I feel that makes the panel a lot more kinetic in the way that it's demonstrated, because it helps give a feeling of the tension and the action as it happens. Again, this is coming back from a filmmaker's perspective, So it's when it comes to these sorts of things, we have equal ground in how we do these stories and how we shape the story together. And we have gotten into a bit of a scuffle every now and then as to what it is that we can do. But again, we've mentioned this before, it's no one's ego over the other.
Yeah.
This is our story ultimately, and we want to make sure that how it comes out is with both of our creative input and both of our creative sort of visions.
If you're okay with it, Zaid, I'd like to mention, and again, because I know a lot of you are creators here, with chapter 4, we actually sat together on the writing end, and there was a lot of rewriting in that chapter.
That's right.
Because we sat down and we said, well, Zaid, okay, it was a nice kind of foundation for the story, but I told him that the dialogue needs to be expanded. There's so much that people discuss. Okay, so chapter 4 a lot of it takes place in a boardroom, right? So how are you going to make that interesting in a comic? And I sat down, and because I've been in so many of these board member, CEO type sitting in a boardroom and the arguments that happen there, so we had a discussion about how those conversations go down. And then I just blabbered and typed a bunch of stuff, sent it to Zaid, and we had a long conversation, and then he's sitting down thinking, and then a few days later, he came back with a full script rewrite, and it was beautiful, And
that's what happens when you both live in an actual boardroom setting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of this is derived from life.
Again, like I said, the story is semi-biographical, but you also kind of, you have to put in, even if it's not your life story, you have to put in some of your life experience and kind of integrate that into the story.
You told us about your process. Now, the next part of this panel is obviously going to focus on you publishing this book.
Yeah.
Now, this has been your life's work from 2012 till now, with 10 years in.
That's right. It took me 10 years.
Oh, no,
10 years.
It is, yeah.
10 years. And next year, you're going to build an entire full issue,
full graphic
novel. So that's how many chapters we're talking about here?
We're talking about 6 main chapters and 6 subchapters, so in total 12. It's around 300 pages.
And
worth of
for
story.
everyone in the audience, you can actually check them out on their panel. They have one right here. And you can also get the book from local bookstores here as well, right?
Eventually, you will be able to. I'm finishing off the final.
The single issues were very successful. They were in Kinokuniya, they were in comic stock and comic paper.
Every year we released one,
And we sold them out entirely. Issue number 1, chapter number 1, we printed, it was so popular, we printed 3 editions.
3 reprints of that,
Yeah.
so it's good.
And we sold out from all of our issues finally in the Stanley Supercon in Jeddah back in June. So that was, from 2016 when it first came out to 2022, 6 years of just going through this, and we finally sold out. And that's when we said to ourselves, you know what, this is actually going exactly where we want it to go. We should soldier on with it.
Okay.
By the way, you guys, if you go to our website, waylcomic.com, just for the convention, you can download our first 3 issues for free. And we're doing that in preparation for the release of our graphic novel next year.
I think the first 2 subchapters are on there for free as well. The first 3 subchapters.
I don't recall. Yeah, sure.
I believe they are.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can get the first 3 issues. Now my main question is, do you think that local comic book artists over here are supported widely?
Supported by whom? Because we are a very tight community.
We work with
artists
3 of
and
them.
writers. Yeah, exactly.
Which is the next page, Figment.
Before we get to that, let's kind of just answer on Kevin's question. As a community here in the Emirates, we're very tight knit. You sitting next to me right here is just a great testament to that. And hi, Razan, of course, our favorite filmmaker right here. We don't have a problem supporting each other. Obviously, when the MFCC came out and everything, you see the amount of people who are fans of pop culture here in the Emirates. You think to yourself, well, this is going somewhere. That being said, the media world still hasn't caught on to that just yet. And
it's not just media, it's also the publishing and distribution houses. I mean, that's really where your struggle is going to be, especially if you're trying to publish and distribute print.
Because it's an old school mentality. When you tell people comic books over here, they immediately think stuff like Archie, or if you're Arab, I see a couple of people here, Majid, Bassem, Samir, all that stuff.
Amazing.
Stuff that started back in the 70s was very popular with the 70s, 80s, and early 90s generation.
But like what you're mentioning these are titles not based here.
Yes, they are.
Like as in like Archie, for example. It's all like
Archie's not. Majid is published out of Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Bassem is published out of Saudi.
I'm talking about the problem that I feel personally is that a lot of imported content here takes precedence over local artists. Like we have conventions like this.
It's very true.
To help you guys, basically. But what do you think needs to happen for people who are in the audience to know that, okay, there are local art that I can basically
Well, I'm going to say this straight up. The conventions started off for the sake of the artist. They said, well, here we are the community, we're going to give you guys a platform to do this, go out and do this. However, when people saw the commercial aspect of this and the commercial potential, it became more about year after year, became more about the commercials, than it is. Our first convention together in 2016, when we launched the first issue, we were literally sat right across from Kevin Eastman.
Yeah, he's right there.
Ninja Turtles.
He's, I think at the bottom.
Where is he? Just the bottom left corner over here. We spent 3 days across a table from Kevin Eastman, the creator of the Ninja Turtles, someone you spent your whole life collecting his toys, but then from then on, it just became all about the artists, and you were lucky to get a booth or a table at the artist's alley. And it reached a point of frustration. You think to yourself, well, if you want to promote the artists in the scene over here in the Middle East or in the Emirates specifically, where are we?
I think a lot of it has to do with post-convention support. Like what happens after that? Of course, there's a lot of effort that has to come from our end. And that's where we started, investing in Kickstarter and trying different things. But I just think that what's missing is this sort of tight-knit, organized infrastructure that supports saying, okay, let's say there are publishers and stakeholders that come to these events. They see all the potential creatives that are here. Who can we sign on? Who can we talk to? Who can we, that's what's missing. But then, at the same time, the flip side of it is you can publish your own work, right? You can self-publish. It's a harder road to climb, which is what we're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But every year we've discovered something new. We learned something new about the industry. So, and I have to say this, every year we get involved with organizers of the convention, whether it was StarsCon, Stanley SuperCon, and to be honest, the main one for us is MEFCC. The more we stay in contact with them, and the more we are part of community organizations like Hobby Nation and stuff, the more we are able to stay relevant, top of mind, and the more that gives us a chance to come up and meet someone who will be able to help us with something. That's how we managed to get our books in stores like Kinokuniya, Comic Stop, and whatnot. It's really just meeting the people that work in these places and say, we have a few issues, can we put it in? And now our plan is, we want to do a big launch event for the graphic novel. I'll show you that's the cover. For MEFCC in 2023, but we've managed to establish a relationship with the organizers after spending years and years trying to, just being friends and stuff, where we can say, where we're legitimate enough to say, okay, they tell us, okay, launch with us. We want you at this event. And you know what? We know this guy that has a comic book store online, Camel Comics or whatever, or this or that, or we know this store. I think they'd love to have your book and they can distribute it worldwide, And then we have to go and meet those people. So a lot of it is chance, I won't lie, but it's chance when you're at the right place at the right time.
That's true.
And
really
and the right people as well.
Right, of course.
People.
It's actually, we stress on how we've done things here in the Emirates, for example, or in Saudi. But networking is also about kind of jumping and doing whatever it is that you can do when
you don't know what you're doing.
So, at one point in time, someone asked Yasser to bring a couple of comics over to Kuwait.
Yes.
He goes to London often, so he went and put stuff over in a shop in London, Orbital Comics. Silver Snail Comics in Toronto is one of the biggest comic book stores. It's very famous. So when I went back to Toronto to visit my parents at one point in time, I just walked into Silver Snail. I said, here's a couple of issues, put them up on your shelf. And lo and behold, my cousin's son at one point in time just walked in, brought all of his friends into the Silver Snail shop, picked up all the issues and left out. So, we try and spread ourselves as much as we can. I think it's a little bit, it's fate. I think it's kind of the strangest thing. You think to yourself, one day you're going to end up in San Diego Comic-Con, one of the big ones, in New York or whatever. Chance had it that at one point in time, while I was trying to find the life partner, my parents introduced me to someone. Oh, she's a fantastic girl. Oh, great. Where does she live? San Diego. The rest is history, let's just say.
You went for Comic-Con and you came back?
No, I went to became a husband, and then I got free tickets to Comic-Con for the rest of my life. So.
It came with perks.
Right. Before we wrap up, I actually wanted to ask one of the more harsh realities. How much did you spend on making this comic?
Don't ask.
Financially? Or
time? Give us a ballpark of how much it would cost to make something like this.
That's very difficult. Because we're using our personal finances, and the way we spent it initially is we worked issue by issue, year by year. So we wanted to do something so in terms of production, right? You're talking about print. So we wanted it to be high quality print, offset printing. And we started with I think around 200 issues the first time.
Yeah.
So you were talking about around 6,000 to 7,000 dirhams just as your baseline to print that. You could go, phone. You could go cheaper when you're doing digital prints and printing on demand, but if you're printing for a convention and you promote your table or your comic or whatever frequently and prior, then you should consider amassing the funds to print a fair amount of comics. One mistake I want to say in terms of logistics, don't make, that I learned, we both learned, releasing issue by issue. We thought because we sold out issue 1 the first year, we printed 200. It was 200, right? 200 or 250, something like that. We thought we should print another 100 of issue, another 200 of issue 1, but we should go bigger with issue 2 because we thought, oh, all the old folks from year 1 are going to come and buy issue 2 and there'll be new ones, so let's do more. We ended up printing way too much of issue 2, and it took us years to move that unit. And the reason we sold them out in Jeddah, thankfully. But what it is you need to understand that the buyer's mentality is such. Everyone is still learning about your comic every time you come to a convention. So I know sitting on the stage, this is the first time for a lot of people. And I see a fan who's been there from day 1, sitting right across there, Mohammed, how are you going? So, and then you have fans who've been there for years and they're waiting for the next one. But what you have to do is you have to keep investing in number 1 all the time. And then a little bit of number 2, a little bit of number 3. When we came to issue 3, we printed less than what we usually did, and we did sell out. And we had a great year when we did issue 3.
That's right, yeah.
We had a great year, yeah. And it actually became harder to reprint issue 3 than it was issue 2. Because we had so much of issue 2, we didn't need to reprint it. We did one reprint, I think. We ran out in 2018 of issue 2, and then we did a reprint, I think. Oh, 2017, sorry. And then in 2018, we reprinted issue 2 for the release of issue 3. So you gotta...
Yeah. So when you have the final issue, the final graphic novel coming out, is this the complete story?
Complete,
Yes,
total story.
Right.
A to Z. We're gonna add some extra stuff in there. Zaid was going to talk about the collaborations, but I'm going to be putting character art stuff, and I'm going to show. We're going to reveal a lot. So
You're going to be putting in character art stuff? Yeah. I didn't know that.
No, you didn't.
Well, yeah. See, this is when they say they fight a lot. They get things told.
I said it to you in my head. No, you did not. All right. So,
Gents, thank you so much, though. I mean, like, is there anything else more you want to talk about, Wayl?
just really quick, we want to talk about Figment, which are
that's
the
very
subchapters.
important. That's a very important aspect. Figment are the subchapters, the 6 subchapters that happen in Wayl. Rather than following the canon of the story, we are following the thoughts, the sort of the surreal I call this figment of life rather than figment of imagination.
So these chapters are going to be in the graphic novel.
Yeah, these are more of a surrealistic interpretation of each of the person's experience within the novel as it happens. And the great thing about this is that we found 3 different collaborators to work with us who were very happy to do the work. We'll show a bit of examples. If we go back, if we just go back, if we go into Figment number 1, for example, this was an artist called Ria Oommen, who was an Indian undergrad, almost undergrad. She just graduated high school. Was going to go attend art school in UBC, University of British Columbia.
So we wanted to give her a platform to.
So this was her platform to start off and kind of get her portfolio running on a strong note. She illustrated issue number 1 for us, or chapter number 1 of Figment. We had actually given her the chance to do all 5 until her academic studies got in the way, and she kind of backed off of that. So we decided to pitch the others to other collaborators, and then, by chance we are friends with Ashraf Ghori, who illustrates for Marvel and DC.
I cannot tell you how grateful we are to Ashraf. Ashraf is an international artist. He's pretty big.
He's based in Hyderabad.
Yeah, and we cannot afford him. And when we go to conventions and we make friends with different artists grow at different paces. So he's just one of those, alhamdulillah, mashallah, who grew, just catapulted in popularity. And when we approached him, we're like, listen, Ashraf, we can't afford you. And he's like, no, but I see you guys working at it every year, and you guys are serious, so I want to help you. And I said, but you're not going to like the budget I have for you. And he heard our budget. I mean, we really spent a lot of our personal funds. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I want to see you guys succeed. I want this comic book to come out. And he did 3 of the Figment subchapters for us.
2 to 4 for us.
Yeah.
And, all credit due for Ashraf. He's a hero himself. I think again, one of the things that sort of what you do when you talk about conventions and how you talk to people and get to know people, it just goes back to that adage of it's not what you do, it's who you know. And that's very important when it comes to this sort of thing, because the more you expand your network, you'll be surprised as to how many people want to help you out with this.
And you met Ashraf at the convention here.
Yeah.
And MUFCC.
Yes, and we kept bumping into him at different conventions. Yeah. The other person I really want to talk about, because she is a brilliant artist who always understates her talent is
absolutely.
Tarfa Khalid. She's a Saudi artist. She and I actually went to animation school together in Abu Dhabi at the Cartoon Network Academy.
That's nice. Yeah.
So we did the small course together, and we always keep bumping into each other. And she's got this beautiful webtoons thing. I don't know, it's a channel or whatever you call it. And she's just grown in popularity over the years. We've actually approached her so many times because her art style is very emotional, very deep, and very quirky at the same time. And I told Zaid she's going to be perfect for Figment because Figment is basically sort of the cerebral environment of Wayl, whereas the main story arc which I draw is grounded in the real world. So I told Zaid that this artist is definitely going to bring something amazing to the table. And finally this year, after badgering her to death, she agreed to do one of the chapters, and this is a sample of her work. And it's the perfect chapter for her. I don't want to give anything away, but I think this chapter, it brought me to tears when she drew it. It looks so simple, but there's so much heart in it that we were more than happy to work with her to put it together.
I noticed a tree there. I can see it. The entire style just reminds me of Tree of Life. Like
yes,
yeah,
I will. Stop it, Kevin. Stop dragging out
spoilers. But no, Tarfa is very, very talented with atmosphere, I have to say. In 2009, we were conducting a workshop on how to draw your own comics and how to write and illustrate them. And at the very end of it, we had a competition for someone to go ahead, write and draw a one-page comic strip that it just encompasses the entire plot of a story without having to expand it above one page. And we did this workshop for 2 days?
3 days.
3 days. And ultimately, after we were done, who should so happen to win? It was Tarfa. Because she had the greatest story with the greatest art and
so much self-doubt.
It's weird. The atmosphere was absolutely mind-blowing.
The other thing with a lot of these artists we work with, we have a lot of self-doubt, and a lot of insecurity, and I think when we encourage each other, we kind of bring the best out of each other. So
I mean,
she did that with us, and we did
it's a
that
real
with her.
thing, right? With artists and content creators and anybody, they have imposter syndrome. Huge. Imposter syndrome is a real thing.
Oh yeah.
And like I can imagine, 10 years of work, 10 years of work can really mentally wear you down.
Yeah, it can. Another artist we work with, so the Figment subchapters, there's a Saudi artist we met at the convention. Her name is Tala Al Sohaibi. She's someone who's never drawn anything for comics, and she has major imposter syndrome.
And she's only 27, by the way.
Yeah, and she's a dentist. That's her full-time job.
Really?
Yeah. She did these are the subchapter covers. So every subchapter has a cover. This is a sample of her cover art, and it is mind-blowing. This is nothing compared to. I'm hiding.
Yeah.
What she actually did.
I mean, it's amazing, right? People who have regular day jobs actually have this insane talent with something else entirely.
And again, without conventions like this, we wouldn't have met these.
It's very true. It's very true.
Yeah.
Tala actually had a couple of tables away from us in Jeddah for her artist Sally table. And, through your kind of everyday walking around and just hanging out with the people who were there at the artist Sally, we just happened to kind of look at her art and say, this really fits what we want. Like, are you keen on doing something like this for us? And she was absolutely excited. So when I started giving her the ideas for the story, if you want to go back just to that, not the story, I mean the art for that. I said to her, yeah, the cover art. I said, well, there's a certain theme for this cover art because it also relates to a poem that is part of the story that deals with these particular subchapters. The poem is in Arabic. It's called Nasj al-Haya, Figment of Life. So every sort of thing that you see that's coming down here, it's 5 chapters, 6 chapters worth. Those are all verses from the poem itself.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah,
And again,
written in
because
Arabic.
poetry is integrated into our culture so deeply that, again, going back to what you were asking us before about making it more native to our culture, these are some of the things that we thought about to put it in to make it interesting and just not keep it at surface level.
Yeah, because we see, look at the Museum of the Future is a perfect example right here outside. It's literally poetry.
The poetry, exactly.
Imposed on a building. So it's very cool that you actually have incorporated that as well as part of your art at the
And it
same
doesn't
time.
conflict with the story because for us, there's the main story arc, which I'm drawing, and then these subchapters are on another plane. And when we put it together, it just worked beautifully.
It all helps with sort of the dimensions of the story. It gives it more dimension. I always talk about the theory of the three S's in talking about these things. It's the story, the setting, and the symbiosis between them. And so, I mean, that's something that's very important to me as a philosophy when writing a story, is to make sure that all three are completely there and
You can't separate them.
What do you hope for in 2023? And this is like the final thing I'm going to be asking you.
Zaid, but don't be mad at me. I want the Eisner Award. I want it. No. You know that whole manifest, whatever nonsense. I want it. And I told Zaid, we release this book, we distribute it, and we submit for the Eisner. That's what I want.
I mean, for sure.
I'll tell you one thing. It took me 10 or 11 years to write this book, and I just, yeah, it is a lot. But again, it's only because the story evolves as you're writing it. There would be times when, yeah, like he said, he would help me edit the story, or I would come up with something and call him at like 1 o'clock at night and say, well, you know what? No, stop drawing this way and do it the other way. And obviously he'd be pissed off.
We're both editing the book together.
Yeah, so there's no art director. We're both editors and art directors and everything with them. And, I want to get this book out of my system because I want to just scream it out to the world.
This is what we can do. And after 10 years of writing this story, I really hope you get the Eisner. Honestly.
Inshallah.
You don't want to inflate your own ego, but you kind of see...
It feels good.
No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, all jokes aside, the award, I mean, we want to submit it for awards. That I would be lying if I said no.
Yeah.
But what we want is we really want the story to be out in mass, that there are enough people reading it, and it just opens a door. I don't know what that door is, but I know that I and Zaid have never seen something like this before. And we just want to share it with the world and see what it sparks.
And I think it's very interesting, the fact that before the fans got to appreciate it, academia did. And that's something that I've never seen or heard of before. When you get yourself in an academic journal first, before you get yourself in a magazine or a newspaper or whatever, you kind of wonder to yourself, there's something there, isn't there?
So everyone, thank you so much for sticking around. We know it's a long one, but stay tuned for the next panel because we're going from local art to local film.
Yes.
And Raz, right here, she's right here.
Raz.
That's the next panel discussion coming up. Please, it's a very interesting story, I promise you. Come check it out, and they are definitely going to warm your socks off. And we're all about local culture. Please give a big round for Mr. Zaid and Yasser. It's always nice to have local talent and local art come from our region. It's very rare that happens. Stick around for the next panel for sure. Enjoy the rest of StarsCon. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all.
And ladies and gentlemen, that was the Wayl Comics panel taking place right here at StarsCon. In less than 10 minutes, we're going to have the next panel with the feature film producers of Crier. All that taking place in less than 10 minutes.